You don't have to chase her. You don't have to prove yourself. And no, you don't need to be perfect, because the kind of love that reaches into her soul has little to do with your looks, your money, or the words you say. It's something else, something quieter, something most men never even learn to touch. Let me ask you, have you ever felt her energy shift without a word? She becomes softer around you, more curious, more affected by your silence than by another man's praise. This isn't manipulation, it's magnetism, and it's triggered the moment you stop needing her and start mastering yourself. In today's reflection, you'll uncover the Stoic power that makes her fall in love without understanding why. Not because you forced it, but because your energy created the space where her walls fell on their own. No games, no begging, just a presence so grounded, it makes her question everything she thought she wanted. If you've ever wondered why some men walk into a room and shift the atmosphere, why women feel drawn even when those men say so little today, you'll understand. So walk with stillness, lead with restraint, and learn to use this power not to take from her, but to call out the part of her that longs for something deeper. Now let's begin with the one shift inside you that changes everything outside. Number 1. The unseen energy of masculine stillness. Your presence says more than your words, and it bypasses her logic. She doesn't know why she keeps thinking about you, why your image lingers when you're not around, why in a room full of noise and distractions, her attention subtly keeps circling back to you. It's not your looks, not your charm, not even what you said. It's something deeper, something she can't explain because it bypasses the parts of her that analyze and whispers directly to the parts of her that feel. What she's sensing is your stillness. Not the kind of stillness that lacks energy, but the kind that radiates controlled intensity, unshaken, grounded, focused, even in silence. Because the modern man has forgotten. It's not just what you say that reaches a woman. It's how you hold yourself in stillness that makes her feel something beyond reason. She's used to men who lean in too fast, who try to perform their worth, who speak to be seen rather than pausing to observe. But you don't push, you don't rush, you don't chase the moment you let it reveal itself. And that restraint, that presence that doesn't seek attention, but holds its own gravity, it disorients her defenses. She finds herself drawn to you without knowing why, because your stillness creates space for her to soften, to project, to imagine, to crave your next move even when there is no move at all. This is not manipulation, it's mastery, because your calm is not an act, it's an extension of your discipline. And when she stands in front of you, what she senses isn't just a man, but a man who doesn't need anything from her to feel whole. That's what changes the dynamic. You become a sanctuary, not a transaction. You become the silence she's been searching for in a world full of noise. And she may not be able to explain it. In fact, the more she tries, the more confused she gets. Because stillness to the feminine isn't logical, it's magnetic. You don't move toward her with desperation, you move through life with direction. You carry the silent message, I am here with or without your attention. And that kind of energy, that kind of masculine composure, it doesn't compete with other men. It removes you from comparison entirely. She begins to feel something foreign, peace without needing to be in control. And when a woman feels safe without explanation, seen without pressure, drawn without being led, she falls. Not for your status, not for your effort, but for the invisible clarity of your energy. That's the power of stillness. And most men will never unlock it because they fear silence, they fear space, they fear being alone with themselves. But you've made peace with that space. You are the silence between the noise. And she feels it, even if she never says it. Number 2, emotional restraint becomes irresistible tension. When you don't overexpress, she leans in to figure you out. She doesn't fall for what you say. She falls for what you don't say, for the pauses, the glances, the moments where she expects you to speak and you don't. Because your silence isn't empty. It's full of self-control, full of presence, full of an invisible weight that forces her to feel you even when you say nothing at all. You've learned that a man doesn't need to overexpress his feelings to be understood. In fact, the more you overexpress, the more you dilute the power of what's real. Women are not addicted to your words. They're addicted to your mystery, and mystery only exists when you hold something back. That doesn't mean you're cold. It doesn't mean you're fake. It means you've mastered the tension. You give enough for her to feel secure, but never so much that she feels she's figured you out. Because the moment a woman can predict everything about you is the moment she starts losing attraction. Not because she's cruel, but because desire requires tension. And most men, in their need to be loved, kill the tension too early. They reveal everything they confess. Too soon, they make themselves emotionally naked, not from power, but from insecurity. And the feminine senses this. She may smile, nod, even say she appreciates your openness. But inside, she's already retreating. Because what she's craving is the man who doesn't need to be understood. The man who can sit in the unknown. The man who doesn't rush to relieve the discomfort of her curiosity, but lets her sit in it. That discomfort, that hunger to understand you, that subtle ache to pull more emotion out of your chest, that's what keeps you on her mind. Because you're not trying to impress her, you're not performing. You're not oversharing to win her sympathy. You are disciplined with your expression. You speak only when the moment calls for it. And when you do, you speak without asking to be seen. That kind of man is rare, because every other man is trying to prove his depth to show how much he feels to overwhelm her, with honesty that comes not from strength, but from neediness. But you hold back not as a tactic, but as a truth. Because you've built a world within yourself that not everyone gets access to. And that world, that emotional kingdom behind your eyes, it pulls her in, not with volume, but with vibration. She doesn't know why she wants to understand you, why she replays your words at night, why she keeps wondering what is he thinking right now. It's because you didn't give her the answer. And now she's falling into the space you didn't fill. That's the tension most men are afraid to hold. But you've mastered it. Because emotional restraint isn't absence. It's power, the power to remain rooted in your center, while she circles you, drawn by something she can't name. And when you do speak, when you finally open up, it lands like thunder. Because it's not one of 1,000 words. It's the one she's been waiting to hear. And that's why she falls, not because you shouted your love, but because you let it build in silence until it became undeniable. Number 3, you mirror her without losing yourself. She feels seen but not controlled, and that creates addictive safety. She's never met someone quite like you, someone who sees her, really sees her, without trying to own her, without trying to fix her, without turning her emotions into a map for his own behavior. You don't try to be the perfect man. You don't say all the right things. You don't bend to every emotional current she rides. But when she looks at you, she feels mirrored, not because you echo her feelings, because you reflect them without being consumed by them. This is rare. Most men either fall into emotional mimicry, trying to match her tone, her moods, her words, or they go completely numb, afraid that any connection to emotion will cost them their strength. But you found the line. You listen, but you don't absorb. You understand, but you don't react. You allow her emotional waves to pass through the space between you, while your feet remain planted in the ground. And because of that, she begins to feel something she hasn't felt in years, if ever. Safe. Not safe because you smother her in validation. Not safe because you agree with everything she says. But safe because you hold your own shape, even while reflecting hers. And that, to the feminine, is intoxicating, because now she can feel without being managed. She can speak without being corrected. She can soften because she's not being controlled. You become the rare space where her full range is welcome, but where your presence does not shrink to accommodate it. And that paradox, that feeling of being seen without being contained, that's what pulls her in. Because you're not trying to take her power, you're not trying to make her dependent on your steadiness. You're simply anchored. You don't rise when she rises, you don't fall when she falls. You allow without surrendering your core. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And you apply this truth to connection itself. You don't try to control her love. You don't try to predict her emotions. You don't seek to manipulate her into attachment. You simply stand still enough for her to recognize her own truth, reflected back through your composure. She may not understand why she can't stop thinking about you, why your silence feels louder than another man's praise, why your gaze feels like both a challenge and a sanctuary. It's because you're not demanding her affection. You're allowing it. And when a woman feels both freedom and focus in a man's presence, when she feels mirrored but not molded, that's when she stops comparing, stops resisting, stops analyzing, and she simply feels. And what she feels is the beginning of something she didn't expect. Love unprovoked, unforced, unexplained. Number 4. You create emotional contrast, not emotional chaos. You're calm when she's storming, and that contrast anchors her. She's had enough of men who match her chaos, men who rise with her highs and fall with her lows, who mirror her stress with more stress, her fears with defensiveness, her silence with louder silence. That cycle, it's exhausting, it's emotionally violent, and it never leads anywhere but disconnection. But then you show up not as her rescuer, not as her opponent, but as a counterweight. You don't amplify her chaos, you diffuse it, not with words, but with energy, because your emotional world is governed by principle, not impulse. When she's angry, you don't escalate. When she's distant, you don't chase. When she's anxious, you don't feed the fire. You remain the unchanging variable in her storm. And in that contrast, she begins to feel something unfamiliar. Stability. Not forced, not fake, but the kind of deep-rooted calm that only comes from a man who has made peace with his own chaos. You're not reacting to her. You're responding to truth. And when you respond, it's not for control. It's to offer clarity. You let her have her emotions. You don't shame them. You don't minimize them, but you don't get swept up in them either. This is what changes everything. Because when you offer calm to a woman who's spiraling, you do something no man before you has done. You offer her back control of her own emotional world. She realizes through you that she doesn't have to fight to be heard. She doesn't have to escalate to be seen. She doesn't have to perform pain to gain attention. You see her through the storm and remain unmoved. And the more you hold your center, the more her storm begins to break. Not because you silenced it, but because your presence disproved the need for it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." And your strength. It's not loud, not flashy, not muscular in the traditional sense. It's internal. The strength of a man who doesn't panic when things get messy, who doesn't try to win an emotional moment, who doesn't seek to dominate but to stabilize through example, not explanation. And as her chaos dissolves into your calm, she realizes something else. This man isn't here to fix me. He's here to show me who I become when I stop trying to control him. And in that space, she finds herself opening, not with fear, not with manipulation, but with trust. Because love cannot grow in chaos. It grows in the contrast between emotion and stability. And you are that stability. That's why she falls, not because you mirrored her pain, but because you gave her a place where she could release it, a place called you. Number 5, you don't pursue, you magnetize. She doesn't chase you because you ask, but because your gravity pulls her. You don't run after women, you don't perform for attention, you don't compete for love, because real power isn't in the chase, it's in the pull. And the pull comes from who you are when you're not seeking anyone's approval. Most men try to capture a woman's attention by reaching outward, through words, through gifts, through effort that says, "Look at me, please, choose me." But you understand the Stoic principle. That value doesn't announce itself, it simply exists and lets the world reorient around it. So you don't explain your worth, you embody it. You live with direction, you move with clarity. You lead with energy that speaks louder than any pickup line ever could. And that's what draws her in. Because when a man no longer seeks to impress, he becomes impressive. You're not indifferent, you're not arrogant, but you've detached from the outcome. And that detachment is freedom. You are no longer a man who needs her validation. You've already validated yourself through action, through purpose, through mastery. So when you walk into a room, you don't chase attention. You pull it not because you demand it, but because you radiate presence, the kind that cannot be faked or fabricated. And she feels it deeply, even if she doesn't understand why. Your calm unnerves her. Your stillness seduces her. Your silence makes her mind work for you. Because the less you reach, the more she leans in. You are not withholding love, you are simply not wasting it. You give only where there is alignment, you offer, only when it's received with reverence. And this is where most men fail. They offer too quickly, reveal too much, throw their energy into a void, then wonder why it returns empty. But you've refined your presence into a filter. You don't chase women, you attract the ones who are ready for the level of self-possession you live by. And that makes her chase not with desperation, but with curiosity, with the hunger to know more, to earn your focus, to understand the why behind your calm. You didn't need to provoke her desire, you unlocked it by remaining centered while every other man ran off center. This is what the world never told you, that magnetic men are not the loudest, they are the most internally aligned. As Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. You don't talk about your worth, you walk in it. And that walk, that rhythm of restraint and readiness, is what makes her fall. Not because you asked, not because you impressed, but because your energy whispered to hers, "I will not chase what I can naturally attract." And in that moment, she stops chasing validation elsewhere and begins circling you. Not because you needed her, but because she finally met a man who doesn't need anyone to know who he is. Number 6, you offer presence without pressure. You make her feel chosen, not captured, and that freedom makes her return. There's something subtle in the way you show up, something she can't quite explain, but she feels it. You're there fully, but you're not pushing. You don't ask for more than she's ready to give you. Don't try to speed up the connection. You don't place emotional weight on her shoulders. And that is rare. Because most men come with pressure to decide, pressure to reciprocate, pressure to validate their efforts. But you offer presence, not demand. You create space, not pressure. She can relax around you, not because you don't care, but because your care is free from control. And that freedom, it disarms her. Because for once, she doesn't feel like she's being pushed into affection. She feels like she's being welcomed into it. You give without overgiving, you stay without clinging, you love, or at least make her feel deeply safe, without collapsing into emotional dependence. You let the moment breathe, and in doing so, you allow her to breathe. And that breath, that ease, is what begins to rewire her emotional rhythm, because she may have never known what it's like to be with a man who doesn't need her chaos to feel alive, who doesn't confuse closeness with control. who doesn't think love is proven by possession. She may pull away just to see what you'll do. But you won't chase, not because you don't care, but because you respect her journey more than your own desire for connection. You understand something deeper. That pressure collapses polarity, and freedom intensifies attraction. You give her the choice, and in that choice, she finds you. Because you are not trying to bind her, you are inviting her without a deadline. Marcus Aurelius once said, "No man is hurt but by himself." So you don't put your pain in her hands. You don't put your timeline in her lap. You don't make her responsible for your fulfillment. You offer and you release. That energy, it haunts her in the most beautiful way. It lingers, it draws her back, not because you held on, but because you let go with grace. You didn't disappear, you didn't punish, you didn't guilt. You simply stood where you've always been, present, still unmoved. And when the world gets loud, when other men start pressing, when expectations start to feel heavy, she remembers you, the man who didn't rush her, the man who didn't corner her, the man who loved with such quiet power that she chose him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Number 7, your mystery awakens her imagination. She fills in your silence with her own desire, and that makes it hers. She can't stop thinking about you, not because you're constantly in her ear, not because you overwhelm her with affection, but because you don't. And in that space, that carefully curated void, her imagination wakes up. You've left room for her mind to do the chasing. While most men try to fill every gap with noise, to explain, to justify, to impress, you lean back. Not out of arrogance, not out of laziness, but because you know. The feminine mind is addicted to solving mysteries, and you are the quietest riddle she's ever felt. She replays your last message, wonders what you meant, asks herself why she cares. She tries to figure you out, but the more she tries, the deeper in she goes. You've triggered her internal dialogue, and in doing so, you've implanted yourself into her emotional world without ever forcing your way in. This is not manipulation, it's restraint. It's the difference between a man who performs for her attention and a man who knows his silence has more power than their noise. Because silence in the hands of a man who knows how to wield it becomes a mirror, and she starts projecting her hopes, her fantasies, her longings. She fills in the blanks you left with the version of you she wants you to be. And in that process, she attaches herself to her own idea of you. That's the secret. She doesn't fall in love with men who overwhelm her. She falls in love with men who activate her imagination. You don't tell her your life story in one night. You let it unfold slowly, unpredictably, like a novel worth rereading. You don't chase her attention, you make your absence felt. Because you understand. Desire isn't built on what's given, it's built on what's withheld with intention, as Marcus Aurelius said. The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. So you don't try to control her perception. You don't try to force an image. You be, and you let her discover. That's what drives her wild, not your declarations, not your need to be seen, but your comfort in being unknown. Because a man at peace with his own mystery invites her to join a journey, not a destination. And when she leans in to get closer, it's not because you demanded it, it's because she couldn't help herself. That's when the connection becomes real. Because now it wasn't your pursuit that made her feel something. It was her own imagination dancing with your silence that built the desire. And that desire, it doesn't just fade. It lingers, it loops. It makes her come back for more, not for what she knows about you, but for what she still doesn't. Number 8. The Stoic man becomes the mirror of her growth. She falls for the man who doesn't need her, but reflects her highest self. At first, she thinks you're just different. You're quiet, but not passive present, but not clinging attentive, but not reactive. You don't lean on her, you don't chase her, you don't fall apart when she pulls back. And that unsettles something inside her, because while most men orbit her feelings, you stand outside of them, not detached, but anchored. And from that stillness you do something no man before you has done. You reflect her back to herself, not with judgment, not with flattery, but with clarity. When she's chaotic, you don't mirror it, you contain it. When she's doubtful, you don't reassure out of fear. You let her meet her own uncertainty with strength. You don't try to make her feel something, you let her recognize who she becomes in your presence. And that is rare, because most men need something from her: attention, validation, drama, even the fantasy of being her hero. But you need nothing, you've already become everything you seek. So when she looks at you, she sees a man not consumed by her, but inspired by something greater than her, a mission, a principle, a discipline. And in that distance, she sees herself not as she is now, but as she could be, because your groundedness calls her to rise. Your emotional clarity challenges her confusion. Your restraint invites her into freedom. You do not shrink to meet her comfort zone. You stay tall and wait to see if she'll stretch. And if she does, it's not because you convinced her, it's because you called to something deeper within her. That's the true essence of masculine polarity, not dominance, not performance, but depth. The kind of depth that doesn't move fast, but moves everything it touches. She realizes that loving you isn't about being chosen, it's about being ready. Because you don't chase, you stand. You don't perform, you reveal. You don't fill silence, you expand within it. And when she steps toward you, she's not stepping toward a man who needs her. She's stepping toward a man who has already met himself. And that, paradoxically, is what makes her fall, not because you filled her cup, but because you never tried to drink from hers. You were already full. As Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly. You must do the work, then wait." And that's what you've done. You've done the inner work, you've refined the outer presence. And now, without lifting a finger, you become the standard by which she evaluates every man after you. Because once she feels what it's like to be reflected by a man who does not flinch, she can't unsee it. She falls not in lust, not in codependency, but in awe. Of you, of who she becomes near you, of the man who stands with quiet strength and makes her want to rise. She didn't fall in love with your words. She fell in love with the man who didn't need to say them. In a world where most men chase, beg, explain, and overprove, you stood still. And in that stillness, you became unforgettable. She didn't fall for the man who tried the hardest. She fell for the one who felt the deepest without being loud about it. You didn't overload her with attention. You didn't try to decode her every emotion. You didn't fight her silence with louder noise. You let your energy speak first. And when it did something in her, opened something ancient, something she didn't know, still lived inside her the desire to be near a man who doesn't want to control her, but hold space for her. A man who doesn't need her to love him, but becomes magnetic because of how he loves himself. That's your gift. You didn't become desirable by trying to be you. Became desirable because you finally stopped trying. Because when you stopped performing, you became real. And when you stopped chasing her, you gave her a chance to feel the pull of your gravity. She couldn't explain it, she still can't. All she knows is that your presence left fingerprints on her mind, and no man before or after you quite compares. That is the unseen power, the Stoic energy that doesn't move fast, but leaves nothing the same. So if these words stirred something in you, if you've tasted that stillness, if you've felt the quiet pull of your own masculine presence rise from within, then this space is yours. This is not just a channel, it's a mirror, a reminder, a rhythm, one that doesn't beg for your attention, but invites the part of you that's already ready. Subscribe to the channel, not for more noise, but for more truth, more stillness, more of the energy that makes her fall in love. without ever knowing why.